Hey, business building warrior, welcome to the weekend update. If you're listening to this episode right when it came out, it's Saturday. And what we like to do on Saturdays is still work. A lot of us work 6 days and rest one. Hey, good enough for God, good enough for us. That's the way He created the whole universe, right? So we're working on a Saturday, sure, but why not take along a great update, a podcast episode that we've gone back and reviewed from maybe 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months ago. We've got hundreds of great interviews. So what we do on the weekends is we go back, we find those great episodes that maybe slipped past your radar, or some of those great insights and tips and strategies from some of the successful students, and just kind of break it down into little easily digested nuggets for your weekend update. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to dive into that in just a moment after I make a couple of announcements. First, if you haven't got a free copy yet of the brand new, all new, our 11th update of the Silent Sales Machine book, this is the book that started this podcast. It started our community, the 73,000 members of our free Facebook group, our incredible events. It all started because I sat down about 20 years ago and wrote a book over a weekend. It was actually just a PDF report at the time, and it took off. And it started this incredible movement that is now thousands of business building warriors all over the world. It wasn't because of anything that I did. I was just making some observations and sharing what others had taught me. I kind of compiled the information into one place with the premise of, hey, you can use the internet to grow the business of your dreams. And here's the rules I'm kind of discovering. Here's some of the things you should avoid, I was discovering. And there's a group of us. We just kind of compiled this information and kept learning new things. Well, I've updated it, and the 11th update is now available. All the stuff you should avoid, the legitimate opportunities that are available to you, the mindset that's required in order to tackle these opportunities, a lot of very specific strategic advice on using the internet to launch and grow the business of your dreams, multiple income streams, using the internet creatively. That's the book. So go to silentsalesmachine.com and you can see more about it. Or you can text the word free, that's FREE, to this phone number. It'll be in the show notes as well today. The phone number is 507 800 0090. Now, if you happen to live outside the United States or Canada, that might not work for you. So just email our support team. There's a link at silentjim.com and say, hey, I heard Jim make that free offer. Assuming the free offer is still around, which it will expire at some point. But now, as we're launching the book, we wanted to give it away for free. That's a great opportunity for you. So there's that. And I also want to remind you, if you're new around here, this podcast is the supporting podcast for the leading Amazon seller training in the industry. I'm talking about the Proven Amazon course at provenamazoncourse.com. It's the longest running Amazon seller training in the industry, with more success stories than any other, a bigger support team. There's about 100 of us that support that course. All kinds of creative modules for every level of Amazon seller experience. If you know nothing about Amazon, you know nothing about e-commerce, we got you. If you've already got a $50,000, $100,000, $1 million a month business, there's ideas in there I guarantee you have never been exposed to that could improve your business. So for $39 a month, provenamazoncourse.com gets you a library of content that grows with you. We believe in just-in-time education, which means right when you need it, we got that next thing that you need, and it's in there. And then we've got our free Facebook group support community at silentjim.com that's there to help you as well if you want to check that out. So that's the introduction for this weekend update. Let's go find out what the team has put together for us today. Enjoy this episode. We'll have brand new episodes for you starting at the beginning of the week, so don't miss those. Hey, have a great weekend. God bless you, warrior. Let's jump into the content. So Brad in Georgia, they've got an incredible story. He actually was introduced to our community because he picked up an old copy of one of my books. That's how he found us, jumped into our podcast, got into the Proven Amazon course, got into coaching a little over a year ago. And at this point, Brad in Georgia have built a business that is doing about $30,000 a month at a really nice margin, and it's scaling quickly. Something I love about their business model is it's very diversified. They've got a good handful of things going on, but the core of it is the Replens system, which is the base model that we teach all of our Proven Amazon course students. you don't know what the Proven Amazon course is, there's a link at silentjimdotcom. There's 3-4 very important links at silentjim.com. There's a link to this podcast, which you're listening to. There's a link to our free Facebook group with 72,000 members, very active group. You'll hear Brad talk about that quite a bit today, how helpful it's been for him and his journey. There's a link to our coaching program as well for one-on-one attention from one of the highly successful coaches on our team who's built a beautiful business and carved out a little bit of time each day or each week, carved out some time to serve the students in our community who want to invest in themselves through our coaching program. And finally, you'll see a link to our Proven Amazon course, which is the flagship course. Costs a little over $1 a day to get in there and get all you need to know as you need to know it, no matter if you're just starting and know absolutely nothing about e-commerce, or if you've already got a 6-figure business and you want to expand and grow using Amazon creatively to continue your growth. So it's a little bit of something for everyone. So let's talk through some of what you can expect from today's episode, and then we'll get our guests over here, and you're going to just love the heart that these guys have. They have some great stories today about some very simple lessons they learned on this podcast that they've applied to their business that has put a ton of money in their pockets. You're going to hear them talk about retail arbitrage, which is something that a lot of people in our community say, oh, I don't want to go to stores. I don't want to shop. You don't have to do those things. But man, you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you aren't hitting some local regional specialty stores looking for great replens and good inventory that you can sell on Amazon. There's a lot of money there. And they talk about exactly how they do that, how they've built the relationships and how it's led to some beautiful things for their business. There's a good number of tools and resources mentioned on today's episode. There's links to all of that in the show notes at silentjim.com. Just look for this podcast episode and they'll get you straightened out there with a good link and an explanation of what each of those tools are. So Brad and Georgia, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thrilled. Looking forward to a chat.
Yeah, good to meet you guys. And we just talked for a couple minutes. I like to save all the good stuff for the listeners. So Brad, let's get into the story, man.
Sure thing. So I started in e-commerce, dabbling in eBay in the late 90s and have been in and out of that since then. And it's mostly buying and selling a few things here and there, some, like vintage automobile parts and a few things around the house. So it was nothing major. And then back in July of 2021, we had a family road trip that we were taking, and circumstances set it up so that I had to drive separately from my family. And the round trip plus some work travel, was going to be about 12 hours of drive time over the course of a week. So I was at audible.com looking for some audiobooks to download before the trip. And you know how at the bottom it says, hey, based on your browsing history or other things you've looked at, here are some recommendations. Well, the first thing that popped up was the Silent Sales Machine book.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know they recommended my book like that.
Yeah. So it sounded awesome. So I downloaded it.
Okay.
And over the course of that week, I basically listened to the whole thing. And I was super stoked by it because I've been looking for something that I could do on the side, ultimately, that I could transition to as I headed towards retirement, right? Rather than just step off the corporate hamster wheel into doing nothing. I said, well, got to establish some sort of a glide path. And so e-commerce was always intriguing to me. So I thought, hey, this is a really interesting opportunity. So I started to listen to the podcasts and literally listened to all of them up until that point. I decided, hey, if I really want to jumpstart this thing, probably should reach out to your team about coaching. So met with Deborah over the phone. Mm-hmm. A couple of question and answer sessions later, we were paired up with Abe McMahon, who has been fantastic. He's a really, really great guy, very measured demeanor. Nothing freaks him out. So it's really helpful. You have those early panic moments and you get your coach on the phone. He's like, oh, this is all good. Let me just help walk you through this. So he and the coaching staff really, I think, accelerated our learning curve. It was just so awesome to have somebody to interact with who could handhold us through most of this. I had started practicing all the sourcing methods and stuff. Still hadn't bought anything. I was just sort of going through the motions, trying to develop the muscle memory and finding stuff and so forth. And so we kicked off selling. Georgia's over at our house frequently. And so she took an interest in it and said, hey, this might be fun for the two of us to do this. So that's how the partnership sort of happened. So
let's find out. Let's hear from Georgia in your own words. We haven't introduced you really yet.
Well, I'm in my 70s, past the halfway mark. And
Possibly.
I always enjoyed working. I'm a bit of a workaholic. And I guess what I've experienced is that the intellectual challenges and the social connections are very meaningful. And I think that's helped me feel more content and adapt better to just being a senior citizen. So, and I love working and I love everything associated with working. And it's also helped me be healthier because I have to maintain good eating habits, get my rest, and develop a path for me in terms of amount worked. I work on the average about 15 hours a week, which is really not very much. And so I stay interested and engaged and healthier as a result of it. So,
But I love that we've got Georgia, who's kind of stepped in as a nearby relative / friend, kind of stepping into the picture, right? And I don't understand the exact dynamics of how all that happened yet, but I just love that you found someone else that this business model resonated with. And Georgia, you're putting it in your own words, like, hey, this is something to look forward to. I'm staying active, keeping my brain rocking on these numbers and these deals, and helping out with the Amazon business. I'd love to hear what your role is, Georgia. Like, what are your responsibilities?
actually, one of the first things I did was to assist developing the warehouse. It was developed in a 2-car garage, and a friend helped us who was interested in the business and what we were doing. And so he looked at our workspace and helped us design a structure that works for us. So we have a concrete floor in the garage, and carts were built. Those just regular shelving, 5-high shelving, and so they were made mobile by putting them on a platform with wheels. So then a structure was created so that those shelves, when I'm using the garage, are off to the side. As soon as we're ready to do the warehouse, those shelves being mobile are put into place. And we have a workstation for the prepping, a workstation for the shipping and boxing, and spaces for computers and other equipment that we use. So the flow is very good. So it's quick. We can set things up and do our work. And it usually takes us, what would you say, 2 hours?
Yeah,
2 to 3 hours.
When we're packing, it's about prepping and packing is about a 2-hour exercise a few times a week.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, my mental model of this that Georgia just described is it's basically like an accordion. I send her a text about 10 minutes before I'm ready to come over. She backs her car out, wheels all this stuff into position, and we fly through our prep and pack stuff. And then when we're done, I put the boxes that we're going to ship in the back of my car, leave them in the garage. And then Georgia rolls everything back like she likes it and pulls her car in.
That's great. Okay, so
Great.
Georgia, you live nearby.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Maybe
And it's your garage.
Yes.
What a great arrangement. I love it. Could I just make a little sidebar for the listeners who are hearing this, and maybe you've heard a good handful of episodes and you've heard people talk about, when should I get this stuff out of my house and start using a prep center? And you've heard me say, wait, there's a third option here. Find a family member or friend nearby, someone who's got some extra space. I've even said specifically, the sweet retired old lady that lives across the street,
That's
like,
me.
Figure out something besides moving it all out of, to another state. And there may be some other good options nearby. And I think this is a perfect illustration of that arrangement where, and the nice thing about this too is, like if you go on vacation, Brad, you still got someone that can receive shipments. You still got someone that can keep an eye on things local. You can do some merchant fulfill this way where you're actually shipping straight to the customer as they place orders. Like eBay is still on the table, right? So you can get it all out of your house, but you can still have the benefit of being able to do all those ship it yourself type of activities still as well. So I love this arrangement. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it works really well. And in addition, if I'm out of town for work, I can generate a shopping list for Georgia, and she can shop while I'm out of town, so that when we get back, we'll tag team on the prepping and shipping of what she's gathered the last 3 or 4 days.
So you're the shopper too.
Yes, I love the shopping.
And what I'm just kind of trying to listen to this episode from the ears of maybe a listener who's out there doing it all themselves? Because that's how a lot of people start. They're doing it all themselves.
I do it as a senior, but I think young people, some neighborhood kids who are into it, responsible, they could do an excellent job.
Absolutely. Well, yeah.
We've enlisted a few, the neighborhood kids. When we have some heavy prep stuff, we pay them, $10 an hour I'll print off a whole bunch of labels and have them label stuff for us from time to time.
That's
These
great.
are probably in the 12 to 13-year-old age group. They'd be out mowing your yard or whatever for $1. So they're happy to sit inside in climate control and
Right.
put some things. It seems like pretty easy money to them. So
I
it's
bet
not
Georgia
hard.
has good snacks on hand typically too.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, it's not hard to enlist them and get them to come in. So getting back to the RA/OA thing, I did some quick check before the call here, and we're doing about 15% OA source product, and the rest is RA.
Wow, 85% RA. Did I hear you correctly?
And I'll tell you why that's and our last 3 months have been right at 30,000 a month in sales, which is a pretty heavy lift for RA. You've mentioned in the past, as have others, it can be a grind to go do that. But our RA is split into basically 2 buckets. So there's the replen part of the RA, and then there's the Easter egg hunt part of the RA that we do. And so we have a source locally, a couple of places actually we go for the Easter egg hunt. We know the managers and text with them ahead of time to make sure it'll be a fruitful visit. And then we go in and we just do the Easter egg hunt thing and come back with a pile of product. And so now you're faced with prepping all of these onesie, twosie things and, getting them entered in the system. And we have a item master file in Excel where we keep every ASIN we've ever sold. And there's just this administrative overhead that comes with it. But it dawned on us a couple of months ago, we recently were accepted into a prep center. It's actually Kyle Curtis's prep center in Portland. And so that's just a few hours from where we are. We have our RA Easter egg hunt stuff run through a prep center to get it to Amazon.
And now I just want to clarify what you mean by Easter egg. I know you guys both know, obviously, and you've kind of adapted some terminology from the community in that regard. Most people listening will probably know what you mean by that. But when we talk about the replens model, we're talking about easy repeat purchase items. You could give it to anybody and say, hey, go to the store and buy these 30 items and the quantities. Anybody could learn that job in 5 seconds. That's what we love to see the replens business become, this list of easy to source, repeat buy items. You're just selling over and over, buying them at full retail price. That's the beauty of replens. Kind of boring. The Easter egg hunt model is what we all did as eBay sellers in some cases, for a couple of decades. People have been doing this where you're hitting the yard sales or you're hitting the clearance aisles. You're looking for stuff that's priced low at the store and selling for more online. We call it the Easter egg model. Very different from replens. Sometimes people get the two confused. They're two completely different worlds. But I call it not walking past $20 bills. Like if I'm going to go to a store anyway, hey, I don't want to walk past $20 bills just sitting there on the shelf. Even if I can only flip it one time, I'll grab it. It sounds like you guys are doing that with some clearance and markdowns on primarily clothing, it sounds like. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. But again, it's something that you can't automate. I can outsource some of the administrative stuff to our VA, but this going to the store thing is a bottleneck, and it's on us. And eventually we'll do that. We'll grow past it, but for now, it's profitable enough that it's helping fund.
Absolutely, 5 or 6 hours for $1,000 net profit. After all said and done, that's time well spent, and it's adding some great margin to your business as you're scaling. Give me an example. You said some that you're kind of checking each other's work. Like, what would be one of those margin call products where, like, how many drops, how much profit, what are you looking for on the Easter egg hunt specifically, like those one-time flips where, and I'm assuming it's a one-time flip because these are markdowns, clearance, closeout items. When you go back next month, they're not going to be there anymore. If they were, you'd buy them again, obviously.
Right.
But what are you looking for when you're trying to decide if you're going to get into it or not?
A couple of things. So first of all, we're looking for a profit margin, typically north of 30%. On ROI in the 80 or higher range. The drops can be a little bit tricky. Some of the products sell pretty quickly. And what we're looking for there oftentimes is periods of time in the Keepa chart where there were out of stocks. You can see the gaps in the Keepa chart. And you can see that if it's something that's going in and out of stock, we can kind of name our price because there are a few other competitors there. So, and then there are some things that are a little iffy where the Keep a chart only has maybe 90 days worth of history. So you can sort of a bet on whether this is going to sell well or not. So in those cases, we typically, and this I rely on Georgia a lot for this, is we're heading into summertime. We might lean into some summertime stuff. I'm not going to buy, a heavyweight parka with 90 days worth of history.
Mm-hmm.
We might sit on that thing till next fall. So that's not interesting. So we do kind of sense check in that regard. Is it the right season? How risky do we want to be on this thing? Other sellers, gaps in the history that suggest people are having trouble staying in stock on this thing, those sorts of things.
And for the listeners' sake, for those who just heard us mention some things you've never heard of before, maybe you're new to the show, let me get you up to speed real quick. We mentioned Keepa. We're not going to dive real deep into what that tool is. Costs you about $20-25 a month. It's a foundational tool that you'll hear mentioned on most podcast episodes on this show. Go listen to episode number 369 to get up to speed on what Keepa is and why we love it, what it does that no other tool does. And we'll kind of leave it at that. You also mentioned our good friend and a sponsor on this program, Jeff Schick, who is a great Amazon legal and policy expert that you can put on retainer for a few dollars a day to help you with any of those legal and policy challenges. He's got a great team. We'll stick a link to that in the show notes. And then you mentioned Humminbird as well. That's a company I have a part ownership interest in. And we help with branding, trademark. People are diving into private label and need some services there. There'll be a link to that in the show notes as well. Where do you want to go next? We kind of left the timeline off. At what point did Georgia come into the picture then?
I think Georgia, you probably started, right? Right at the beginning.
In the beginning.
Yeah. You guys connected pretty fast then. So you were there for that whole first year adventure. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, she was there for the when we did our first shipment that took about 4 hours to send out the first box, making all the errors and system challenges. And you just gotta grind through that. We're very now comparatively.
One of the things that we do now that wasn't available when you guys went through this is for new proven Amazon course students who are just starting this journey. We've formed, it's a $40 class, one-time payment of $40. We call it Kickstart. You can contact our support team at silentjimdotcom. Ask them about the Kickstart program. One-time cost $40. You get into a small group. It's a Zoom class with other new students to walk you through what Brad just described. Some of those one-time finding my first product, packaging it, sending it to Amazon, getting my account set up. A lot of those little frustrations, those little speed bumps that can turn into roadblocks when you're new and you're doing it alone. We like to help people through that initial phase and get them some momentum. So look into Kickstart if
that would be super helpful.
There's plenty of people who get frustrated 6-9 months in and just throw in the towel, but they were determined. Quite often the people who just kind of get frustrated after 6 months or so, they were determined that I'm going to do the business under my own terms. I'm only going to work 2 hours a day. I'm only going to use online arbitrage. I'm never going to go to a store. I'm never going to, and it's like their list of things they'll never do is so long that they've just got this little tiny kind of window of opportunities they've built. If you're willing to do the work and to kind of be flexible, spend 5 or 6 hours. Is it once a week? You said you guys go do your...
Yeah, we do that kind of shopping once a week.
Your Easter egg. Yeah. So, I mean, you're going out and finding $1,000 with a half day, plus of work. Yeah. Those are the kind of people that make it long-term. You're willing to do what it takes. And newsflash, any business you ever start is exactly the same way. Right.
Yeah.
But the reason we're so bullish about this is because I've done e-commerce for a long time. I just haven't seen anything this reliable and consistent.
Yeah. And it's the model that we were just describing has, let me just rattle off the things that it's helped support. So Jeff Schick, who you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Kyle and his proven prep operation over in Portland. We also have what was formerly known as the proven account management team helping us on the back end. And so we've also got our returns processing operation tied in over there in Georgia with Axios. So these are all things that came about recently that are the Lego blocks for building long-term. It just so happened the opportunity to get in on all of those came up all at the same time. So we wanted to fund them by doing this extra work. In time, we'll grow into those. Those are costs that will scale with us. So we don't have to get with that, so to speak, right now. And then the stuff that we're sending down to Kyle and the proven prep is actually counting for our the minimums that he has. And he's very generous in helping smaller sellers with reasonable minimums through his facility. So I'm going to shout out to Kyle and all the work that he's done. He and his team there are phenomenal, very flexible. And it's made a world of difference for us. So I see that as a very win for us.
Appreciate you mentioning that. For those who don't know what a prep center is, you can go to prepcenternetwork.com. We've got a big list of all the prep centers that we know of. If you know of one that's not on that list, let us know. But that's if you don't have a great Georgia who lives across the street or near you, and you've got to send your inventory somewhere besides your own front porch and dining room.
One area that I did want to spend a little time talking about is diving back into the relationships thing.
Yeah.
We have spent a lot of time working with our local store managers.
Yes, you mentioned that. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. And so I'm an introvert by nature, so this is a little outside my comfort zone, but taking the advice from you and Abe in the community, we've met these store managers, and most of them, Georgia has most of them in her contact list on her phone, and they're texting her information. We just had one recently who changed jobs to a new retailer and did what?
And called me up and invited me to come see what they had, and which was very nice, so that they remembered us in a real positive way. So we've put a lot of energy into building those relationships with people. And what I appreciate and admire is Brad's style, which is he's very direct, he's very honest, and he tells them he's a seller.
Mm-hmm.
And because when they see us buying these large amounts of things, I'm sure they must wonder, someone need 10 pairs of that and 10 pairs of this. And so they appreciate that. So then they work with us. And so they'll point out items that they think we might be interested in, or they're just helpful. And they trust us. I think that's a real important piece of it.
Absolutely. Business is built on relationships and trust. And I've said this for years. I mean, you'll hear people with different schools of thought, but I'm pretty set in my ways on this topic, Georgia, that if you meet a manager, you're at a store and someone says, "Hey, why are you buying 20 of those?" You don't make up some silly story about some orphanage you're supporting or something. No, you don't lie. Say, "I sell things online and you guys are supplying me with some great inventory. And I would love to enhance our relationship, see if I can buy even more stuff from you guys." You'll get further faster being transparent than you will making up those funny little stories to try to teach them a lesson about asking bad questions at the wrong time. No, don't make enemies at the register. Meet the manager, tell them what you're doing. And of all the years I've told people to do that, I've only heard one incident where the manager's like, "Oh, wait, you're a reseller? No, we don't want resellers here." Hundreds of stories where, like what you guys are saying, they're like, "Yeah, I thought that's what some people are up to in here, but they're always kind of shady about it." I love that you're just transparent about it. And like, "Hey, you want to come in around the back? We've got like a whole bunch of clearance stuff and maybe you want some of it." Like the relationships pay off.
Exactly the case. I was just going to mention that. So one of the regional drugstore chains we go to, when they do clearance, they mark it down pretty heavily, typically 75%. So we found some really good stuff early on, talking May of last year. A prestige cosmetics brand marked down 75%, was eligible to sell it, is still navigating some gating and ungating stuff as a new seller. This happened to be open for us to sell, so we got a handful of those, sent them in. They sold really well. And so I went back and they were no longer on discount. So I was asking the store manager, I said, "These things were discounted last month and now they're not." And she explained to me, she said, "Yeah, corporate controls the cadence for clearance. And so they were marked down. Somebody forgot to keep them marked down." But she said, "I'll tell you a little secret. As a store manager, we have the authority to mark things down again if they've ever once been on clearance. So you don't have to worry about them being on clearance." And so I said, "Oh, great. So I'll take some more of this." And she said, "Well, how much do you want?" I said, "Well, I'll take all of it. But I get paid every 2 weeks by Amazon. So how about I come back every other week and you discount some stuff that meets our budget?" And she said, "Great. I work Monday through Thursday. So we would go, or Sunday through Thursday. I'd go out there on Sunday and she'd open the case and hand us a little basket and say, 'I'll meet you at the front.' And we would just go through and get stuff and she'd meet us up front and manually mark it all down." So one thing I do want to point out, so that's the kind of relationship we've established. Another one of the store managers in the same chain actually just hands us his scan gun when we show up and says, "All my clearance totes are in the back room. I don't have room to put them out. and just roll up a chair and scan what you need and just let me know. And I said, well, okay, that sounds great. Can I take a couple boxes with me? So I don't have to pay for those.
A couple thoughts, man. This is one of the coolest stories that reinforces what we've been saying around here for a long time. Again, to repeat myself, but build relationships. Relationships aren't some kind of fun little add-on benefit if you're doing business right. No, they're the whole point. That's the whole point. When I come at business from a biblical lens, that's the whole reason business exists, is to enhance relationships. So if you're showing up with your hoodie pulled up and your shades on and like pushing your 50 units to the register, hoping nobody asks you any questions, you're doing this the wrong way. They're not going to hand you a scanner and say, hey, yeah, a lot of the stuff in here that, just scan it. You'll see, you can mark it down 75%. You're not going to build those kind of relationships that Brad just described. You guys have had conversations. And I love you even pointed out that you're an introvert. This didn't come naturally. We encouraged this on the podcast and in the community. It's kind of a theme. It's like, hey, introverts, get out there, talk to people. You'll make more money. You'll have more friends. Your business will get bigger faster. We're talking about very real dollars in the bank. If you'll open your mouth and talk to people, tell them what you're doing, your phone will ring like George's did. I say that all the time. It's like, you want your phone ringing with opportunity? Well, you're going to have to build some relationships to make that happen. I love it.
Two more little relationship nuggets, and then we can move on potentially to another subject. But the store where we go on Fridays, the clerks are typically like college-age kids who are working there with the store manager. And they get really excited when we show up because they have this competition amongst themselves to see who has the longest receipt. And so they'll rush to the checkout when we're there, and they take pictures of themselves holding up the receipt. So they have this little collage of people who've had the longest receipt for a transaction.
That's great.
When they see us coming, they're all running back to the register.
The biggest transaction of the day, checking out Georgia at the end of the shift. I love it. That's so great.
So we also have our local UPS drivers. There are two who work in our neighborhood, Brian and John. And they obviously know what we're doing because I've chased them down the street to hand them a box to ask them to please take it in for us. And so, they said, hey, you can schedule UPS to pick up. You got to do it a day or two ahead of time. There's a nominal fee. And Brian said, but don't worry about that. Here, let me just give you my cell phone number. You just text me when you have something you need picked up.
I'm in the area anyway. I'll swing by on the way at the end of my shift.
So we'll often text him and say, hey, are you still in the neighborhood? And he might say, oh, no, I'm done for today, but I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be in George's neck of the woods between, say, 1 and 2. And so we put the boxes on a little cart, and between 1 and 2, Georgia rolls them out into the driveway, and Brian will swing by and grab them. And so the UPS drivers, our store managers and friends, this year we made a specific effort to get all of them gift cards for Christmas to thank them for our success. And one of the store managers actually got choked up. She said, I've been working here 16 years and have never gotten a gift from a customer. So she will go out of her way to make our lives super easy.
That's awesome. I love stories like this. One of my stories, I've got a couple little quick ones that kind of illustrate this, but they would see me coming at one of the stores where we shopped, and again, a handful of ladies. And this is when I was doing a lot of RA work myself, for our replens business. But they wanted me, the guy with the 3 carts, they wanted me because they know whoever checks me out, I'm going to ask them a question as the checkout's going, like, what's your favorite candy bar? I'm just going to load them up with 4 or 5 of whatever their favorite is, right, for their snack break. So they knew, like, if you see that guy coming, you want him on your line, right? You want to be that person because they'll take care of you. They'll look out for you. They say, hey, we've got more of these in the back. Do you want me to go check? I'm pretty sure we got a whole case of these back there. You want them on your team. Exactly. And it's very rare that someone will resist a kind gesture and a friendship. Hey, they're in business too, just like you are. They get it. You're helping them make more sales. They're on your side. Be proud of what you do and have those conversations. Great stories, guys.
Up another little tidbit from our store manager where we do our Easter egg hunt. She explained to us that the first Tuesday of every month is Senior Day. You get an additional 20% off of whatever you're buying that day and no upper limit on your purchase.
That's awesome. It's like, hey, Georgia, what are you doing Tuesday?
Exactly.
So Georgia immediately put the first Tuesday of every month down in her calendar.
On my calendar for the year.
That's great. I just picked Tuesday random. That's the actual day. Is that what you said?
It is actually that day. And that's not information that's available on the company's website or anything. Would have never had that insight had she not been.
Yeah.
You share it with us.
Right. Relationships for the win, man. And we could go on and on and on and on.
Totally
Endless examples of, and there's just as many examples of people that kind of flame out, they get burnt out, they get tired of doing it themselves, and because they never built relationships. It's just them and a glowing keyboard and going at it. Now you've got to get out there. And I can just see, I can see you guys. There's a joy in this business for you guys. You guys are having fun. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, we're having a great time.
Exactly.
Good fun. A couple of things that I wanted to share. I've got a little list of lessons learned along the way that might resonate with some of the other folks who are kind of new. We did have an opportunity with one of our ASINs where we were the only seller on the listing. And we hear from time to time, like, how closely can you correlate Keepa drops? And I'll let you tell the listeners what drops mean if you want to. But the Keepa drops compared to the units we sold. Mm-hmm. In the course of a month, we had 88 Keepa drops and we sold 208 units, which I've heard in the past, it could be 3, 4, 5 to 1 ratio of actual sales to drops, depending on when Keepa's taking its snapshots, when it's crawling the site and scraping that data.
Exactly.
So our experience when we had a clean ASIN that was just us was 88 to 208.
And that's going to vary so widely. You'll see anywhere from a 2 to 3x up to a 5 to 10x. So really, that's just one data point that we can go off of. And if we just confused anybody with the last minute and a half, go listen to podcast episode 369. We taught you the basics of Keepa. And the beauty of Keepa is literally you can go learn more anytime you want to. I don't care how long you've been using Keepa. There's more to learn to give you an advantage on selecting great inventory that's a good, safe bet. What are the tips you got for us?
One thing I would recommend that our coaches told us early on is come up with or get from the community a smart numbering convention for your SKU number that will carry some information embedded in it that will serve you well when you get into repricers and you get into inventory lab and other things. Your costs and your buy box info can be cleverly woven into that. I won't belabor the point, but if you're just using random SKUs, you can do yourself a favor by getting a little sharper on your naming convention. It's
absolutely
for us.
Yep, because you're selling against existing ASINs, existing SKUs on Amazon, but you can assign your own as well. And if you tuck in pieces of data like which store you bought it from or other things that help you identify it quickly or at a glance know more about the story of that product. One of the things, some people are fans of including the price that you originally paid and some people aren't, because you don't want to create multiple SKUs for the same ASIN as you go buy more. The second, third, fourth, eighth, 15th time you buy that same inventory, you want to use the same SKU every time, ideally. Amazon doesn't like if you create new SKUs every single time for the same product.
Right.
So if you put the price in and the price changes over time, goes up and down, we still say, hey, you know what? We're just going to kind of round off. This is an $8 product. Sometimes
that's
it's $7.
Exactly what we do.
10. Is that what you guys do?
Yeah, we round to the nearest dollar and leave it there. That's general guidance when you're out making decisions on the fly. You can use that information to make a quick purchase decision. Like I can look in the aisles of the store and see what we originally bought it for,
right?
Which made it profitable. And if it's markedly increased, I have to go do a little research to make sure it works.
But if it's lower than that, probably a safe bet.
Probably a safe bet. The other thing that I would suggest, and this happened to us, a happenstance, our local office supply store was going out of business and they had ridiculous markdowns on a bunch of things. So we picked up a receipt scanner, which isn't, necessary. It's a nice to have, but a really nice to have. It has a feature where we can create a keyword searchable PDF file. Right. So when we get those requests from various IP people, hey, can you produce the receipts for this? We can just do a keyword search and come back with a digital copy of the receipt to attach to whatever complaint they've sent us and send it right back to them. And it saves a whole bunch of digging through a shoebox.
Absolutely. And I know Jeff Schick recommends those as well, the receipts. And that's something you can have your virtual assistant, helper assistant. You don't want to be sitting there doing it all yourself, but just, take a picture of it, send that to somebody else, let them handle it. But yeah, you don't want to be digging through a shoebox, like you just said, looking for like, when did we buy 8 of these? It's been 3 months ago. Where's that receipt? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. That'll save you a ton of time. Good tip.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to mention, we have a kind of just real quickly on the list of tools that we used and when we kind of picked them up.
Yeah.
And just as a point of reference, I'm not advocating one way or the other here, but obviously we use Keepa and AZ Insights from day one. And that's only because I asked Abe, our coach, what do I need to get started? And he said those 2 things will get you started. So that's what we did. And he's been proven right. We got a repricer about 60 days into our journey when we knew enough about pricing and managing pricing and like competing for the buy box or being in the middle of the pack or whatever. So a repricer is really well worth it when it gets to the point where it's consuming a lot of your time to stay competitive on your pricing. We got into Inventory Lab about 3 months into our journey. And for those who don't know, that's just a good system for entering in your purchases and creating shipments and that sort of thing. But it also it really supports your P&L and some of your tax information later in the year if you're disciplined about it. That followed by about 6 months into our journey, we picked up Replen Dashboard to help us with replenishment decisions. We were getting to the point where long list of ASINs, things were falling through the cracks, and it was really helpful to just have a tool where we could create quickly some shopping lists. So that was really helpful. And then most recently, we've picked up Seller Board. And I'll be the first to admit I'm not savvy on it yet. That's one of the to-dos on my list here is to get sharper with that and see kind of what it provides. But that's the laundry list of things that we've gotten into.
Gotcha. Yeah, with Seller Board, it's a pretty low learning curve from what I've heard. You just kind of hook it up to your account and it tells you all kinds of stuff you didn't realize pretty fast. It's pretty low learning curve. Yeah, that's a good tool list. And people, for the listeners who might be thinking, oh, I got to learn how to use all those tools. No, you one at a time. I always like to tell the example of one of the couples in our community that built a 7-figure business using Seller Central, which is free as an Amazon seller. Everybody gets that. It's the app on your phone and you can log in anytime. That's where you see the interface you have with Amazon controlling your inventory. So you got Seller Central. They had Keepa, which is a tool we're talking about a lot. Podcast episode 369 explains that tool. And that's it. That's all they had. They used the proven Amazon course to get themselves trained. They didn't use a coach. They used Keepa. They used Seller Central, which is a tool Amazon gives you. After that, it's just a matter of creating convenience for yourself, like a repricer. People say, hey, when do I need a repricer? Well, at the point where you're spending a lot of time repricing your inventory and you're thinking to yourself, man, it'd be nice if there was a tool that could do this for me, get a repricer. If you want to speed up, instead of spending 5 hours preparing your shipments, you'd like to spend 3 or 2.5 hours. Inventory Lab can help with that. It can also make it faster to provide the numbers that your accountant needs for your books at the end of the year. Seller Board, even more zooming in on your numbers and knowing on an ASIN by ASIN basis, which ones should we keep? Which ones should we move away from? And Replen Dashboard, of course, the best feature there, I mean, it does all kinds of things, but for our team, what we use it for is, like you just said, Brad, when's the time to order more? How many more should we order based on what's been going on with this ASIN? How many more do we need right now? It really helps dial that in. So you're not over or under buying, which is the game with Replen.
And I would mention, we kind of took these on, as you mentioned, one at a time. We didn't do it all at once and get overwhelmed. We got to the point where pricing was a pain. We looked at a repricer. We got to the point where creating shipments and tracking our costs was a pain. We got Inventory Lab. So I guess be prepared to kind of grow into these things as you go. That's the reason we're on Seller Board now. I just finished doing our taxes and profitability, but it was all at the top line.
Absolutely. And for the listeners' sake too, as well, a lot of these tools you've mentioned today, we've been able to leverage really nice discounts or special, trial offers for most of them through our affiliate links, typically. But if you go to the show notes for today's episode, silentjimdotcom, look for the show notes for today's episode, you'll see links to all of these tools.
I would like to give a shout out to your team over at the Proven Amazon course about this. I reached out to them with a question, and because I wanted to have our VA have access to some of the modules in there for ongoing training and upskilling purposes.
Right.
And I didn't want to just give my login credentials to somebody else and have like 2 people in there, because it hoses up your tracking of which modules you've completed and which you haven't and so forth.
Right.
I reached out to the team and the response was, hey, under these circumstances, we have a discounted version of the Proven Amazon course for people on your team if you've already paid for the full version at some point. And I won't tell you what the discount is on the recording because it may change over time, but it was substantial and generous to the point where we were able to get our VA a lifetime pack subscription well within our budget. So now he has an opportunity for life to have access to these kinds of skills and ongoing training. So wanted to thank you. That's very proactive and supportive for you and the team to think forward like that. So I really appreciate
Outstanding. I love to hear it. From day one, back when it was just Mary and I, as far as customer support goes, just generosity. Just anything we can do to help. If someone pushes back and says, I don't know, this is really going to stretch us. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's get you in here at something you can afford, because we're so proud of what we do and what we teach. And we've seen it change people's lives. We want to get it into your hands. We want you to become a success story. This is about more than us collecting, a few dollars a month in subscription fees. This is mission for us. This is ministry for us. We want to see lives changed.
Actually, Georgia, if you have anything, you can go first. And I'll look at my notes here real quick.
I think one issue was cost. We paid attention to the cost as we were having carts built, as we were looking at supplies and tried to find things on sale at different places. So we're always aware of doing this with the least amount of money. So we paid attention to costs. Still do.
Your boxes, you mentioned, like when you're at stores, you're like, hey, do you mind if you take some of these broken down boxes with us? I mean, those expenses add up, waiting until tape's on sale and buying it in bulk and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, totally. You should be very frugal about it. It can be done. Let's put it that way. You don't have to go crazy on this. You can get most all of this stuff, especially if you let all of your neighbors know what you're doing. Right. I can't tell you how many boxes people drag over to our front door and leave with us just because they know that we're doing this.
Yep.
So that works out pretty well for us. In terms of going forward questions, so, from a growth trajectory point of view, the two things on our horizon right now are to ramp up the percentage of OA in our business and be running that through the prep center over time. And then the other one is the branded bundles that we want to work on. We've got some super creative people in our family and immediate circle who I think have lots of good ideas for us to test in this regard. So if we make it to the conference, I'm hoping there's some content there that'll help with that. So
I was talking to Nathan yesterday, my coaching director, who's been with me for 19 years. He is our branded bundle expert, along with a few coaches on our team as well. They really geek out on this stuff. Yes, we are going, even though it's not mentioned on the Proven Conference page, we do have a session, probably a couple, planned on the exact topic of building branded bundles. What's the latest? What are we learning? What's working well? And also look at a slightly related topic that is slated to be a new content for the community coming soon, as well as a topic at the conference.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up this one little story, because Abe put me up to this when I told it to him early on. So when I first decided to get the pack, you didn't have the monthly model like you do now in terms of things. It was a one-time buy, and I had read the book, the audiobook anyways, and then gone through a few hundred of the podcast episodes. I said, okay, this is probably worth getting into. So I actually purchased it during lunch on a Tuesday, during my lunch break. And right after lunch, I had a call with one of my multinational customers, kind of like a Zoom thing, a big group of people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in this meeting and my phone rings and I look down and the caller ID said Jim Cockrum on it. And so I told the people on the call, I said, hey, I got to run downstairs and sign for a package. I'll be right back. So I put them all on hold, turned off the video, grabbed the phone, and you had called and said, hey, listen, just heard that you bought the Proven Amazon course, wanted to welcome you to the community. And if nothing else, at least now you have my cell phone number. And I would have loved to spend just at least 5 or 10 minutes talking to you at that point, but I had to get back to my customer on the conference call.
So we have talked before.
We have but maybe 3 minutes. Yes,
3 minutes.
It was like
I do make a handful of phone calls per day. I'll be sitting here, I'll see orders coming in, or I'll see the list of coaching students, and I'll just kind of scroll back in time. And I pray, I'm like, God, let me just talk to the right people. I've got an hour, fill my schedule with divine appointments, I call them. And so it sounds like I was randomly just kind of calling a new student at that point.
Yeah. And that's when I knew we were probably in the right place. I got my wife, hey, when was the last time you bought something and you got a call 90 minutes later thanking you for the purchase and offering support? That was our entree into the community.
Wow. That's beautiful. Well, it sounds like God prompted me in the right direction that day. I don't do it every time, that's for sure. Although I do for coaching students, I do as to the best of my ability. If they've got a textable phone number, I send them a text and say, "Hey, this is my personal cell if you ever need me." And it's the same number that I sent to you here a couple of years back. I've had it for, I don't know, 15 plus, maybe even coming up on 20 years. Same phone number, and all the years I've done that, it blows my mind. No one ever abuses it. Ever. I mean, if they do, you just block them if they ever did, but no one ever has. It's just really good people. Like they want to build a business and they want to know that the guy who's in charge of this community is available and is real and really means what he says. I'm like, yeah, here's my cell phone. Text me. Let's go. So I love that story. I'm so glad you shared that, Brad. That's super cool, man.
Yeah. And, Abe's a reflection of that. He's a great guy, very sincere.
Absolutely.
He's got his youth ministry that he works on, and just a very giving person. He's been an exceptional help for us. So that if he's representative of the coaches who make their way into the community, you're doing really well.
We've been blessed to have attracted some pretty incredible people, just leaders that I get to learn from and lean on and work with. It's a very flat organization. I say we have the most boring org chart you can possibly imagine. It's like we're all just kind of standing next to each other in a line. And we've got our roles, but the thing we all have in common is, we're doing this stuff all day, every day. We're building businesses and building relationships with each other and with this community. And our org chart is just this, list of names across the page. Right? It's like, here we go. Let's do this together. Some of the harder decisions wind up ending up on my desk, but for the most part, we make group decisions. Even like, hey, what do you guys think? What's the consensus here? Let's think through this thing. So yeah, it's a blessing to work with great guys like Abe, and there's dozens. If you believe it or not, we've got dozens of that quality of people. That's our core team. Just blows me away. We've got coaches just out of the kindness of their heart paying in full for some Facebook post they'll see. They've met the person today, and they'll say, "Hey, you know what? I want you to come to the event. I'm buying your airline ticket. I'm buying your hotel room. You need to be there. General admission ticket, VIP ticket, whatever. Like we're paying all of it." That's the kind of people we work with around here, because we love creating that kind of success for other families. We've seen it. We felt it ourselves. We want to be in a community where that kind of new story is bubbling up constantly. And you guys are a great example of that now. Any parting thoughts?
You've mentioned in the past the idea of just-in-time learning as opposed to just-in-case learning. Mm-hmm. The flip side of that is the just-in-time teaching angle.
Yes.
So I would encourage people to think you have to have just a little bit of relative expertise to help the next person behind you.
That's right.
So you don't know everything. You just need to know a little bit more. And the most important skill is the encouragement and the consistency of following up and making sure folks are supported and you can help them out and that they're consistent with buying and shipping, because that's when the light comes on and things work. So that notion of being able to kind of pay it forward by helping the folks who are just getting started is a reflection of kind of how our coaches have treated us.